Samajwadi Party ally meets Mukhtar Ansari in jail, offers Mafia Don ticket to contest elections. We're getting in some breaking news right now. A big Diwali bonanza coming in, with the government now making the decision of excise duty on diesel to be reduced by 10 rupees 10, and there is also, we give it to understand, petrol prices have also been reduced by 5. This comes at a time when fuel prices had skyrocketed. Just on the eve of Diwali, a big decision now being taken by the government of India. Big Diwali bonanza with fuel prices slashed as far as petrol reduced by 5 rupees and diesel that has been reduced by 10 rupees. We'll try and go across to our reporters getting us the latest. This is undoubtedly the big decision that has been taken by the government. Remember, a lot of questions essentially were being raised about the taxation on the fuel prices. Let me try and go across to Abhishek Kapoor, our senior executive editor. Abhishek, big news now coming in. Diwali bonanza. What led to this decision?
Well, obviously, Shawan, this was becoming a political issue because fuel price rise invariably leads to inflationary pressure on other commodities, and hence the government was obviously under pressure. We have seen that the options were limited, and the government has exercised it with excise duty reduction, which would translate into about rupees 5 and rupees 10 respectively, coming down in petrol and diesel, obviously again having a cascading effect on other commodities, and hence perhaps a reprieve for a great mass of people who were reeling under the pressure of inflationary tendencies in commodities, vegetables, everything else, is connected with fuel price. So the government there exercising its only available option of reducing excise duty. This would in turn, of course, Shawan, will put the pressure on the state governments to take care of the respective VAT duties. Because remember, if the government was taking in the excise, the state governments were equally taxing with VAT, and that was adding to the fuel price hike. It was not just that the center was sitting over some taxes or tax benefits, but then the states were also getting through the VAT route. So now the onus would be on the states for matching, perhaps, if not matching, at least take some measure of reducing the VAT and pass on the benefits to the ultimate consumer and the people at large. Again, adding to some reprieve so far as rising commodity prices were concerned, particularly staples like food and milk and vegetables that are directly connected with transportation being a significant component of these commodities. So I think government there, realizing that this was sort of becoming a political issue and taking a call, and now onus, of course, on the state governments of whichever political party is in power in those respective states to make sure that they also contribute. Now they cannot make, opposition parties particularly in the Shawan, cannot make noises that the center is not doing anything or the government is not doing anything. The government has done it. Now it's for the states to contribute and pass on some benefits to the people. Obviously, a Diwali bonanza coming in the midst of festivities.
Abhishek, if I can also take one more question from you, because this is not a decision taken overnight. As we understand, the centre has been discussing, the Petroleum Ministry has been discussing this with the Finance Ministry for quite some time. The reduction of prices were certainly on the cards. And not just that, globally also, what we have seen that India is having a direct talks with Saudi Arabia as well as Russia on petrol prices, on the global petrol prices to be brought down. How exactly are you looking at the situation right now? Do you think this is going to also be brought in as far as the LPG prices are concerned?
Well, Shawan, so the fuel prices, effectively India imports about 80% of its energy needs, particularly fuel. So obviously the fuel prices are intrinsically connected to the global price situation, and the crude price at the barrel is reigning high and is going to go. All indication is that there is no possibility in the near future that this might be coming down. Remember, Petroleum Minister Hardeep Puri and before him Dharmendra Pradhan, they have been advocating that OPEC nations, the cartel essentially controls the crude price. They increase the production so that the prices come down. It has not happened for a while, and that's why I think the government was waiting for the right time, and what better time than the Diwali Eve to really pass on some benefits. Ultimately, of course, the OPEC would need to increase production and bring down the crude prices in dollar terms a bit, and then only perhaps the government would have more freedom in terms of reducing the prices. The same applies to LPG, because transportation of LPG in various forms happens, or LNG actually happens through the sea route, and that also is connected with the global price situation. So I think the government taking a prudent call of, in the interim, passing on some benefits or some reprieve to the ultimate consumer, particularly the poor, by reducing taxes, and the excise is the only option available so far as center is concerned. Now the onus, as I said, is on the states to do something with the VAT duties, because remember, the VAT duties are matching the excise duties, and hence the states cannot say that the entire responsibility rests with the center so far as taking benefits of taxes is concerned. So if the political position was that the center is not reducing taxes because it is trying to beef up its revenues, the same logic now applies to the states, and perhaps the states would have to contribute equally.
Well, that's a very interesting point that you're also raising, Abhishek, because there was a massive fight between the states as well as centre. You've seen the kind of political reactions coming in from West Bengal, senior leaders reacting on it also. Not just that, Tamil Nadu also has been raising this entire issue. Now, do you think that the onus would now be essentially on states, because state taxation is also very high? Look at the prices in states like West Bengal, even for that matter in Tamil Nadu, and Maharashtra for that matter.
Well, absolutely. So if just for the benefit of viewers, Shravan, for every 1 rupee of, or let's say for every 100 rupee of petrol or diesel price, for example, about the actual price is about 47 rupees. There's 53 rupees are duties, various levels of duties, customs, excise, VAT. Now, if the center has reduced excise on both petrol and diesel by rupees 5 and 10 respectively, that's about roughly 5 and 10% in terms of total price from 100 rupees. And now the states, and of that 53 rupees of taxes and duties, roughly half is divided between center and the states. So obviously now the onus is on the states. If the center has moved in with reducing rupees 5 and rupees 10, would the states also contribute? If not rupees 5, then rupees 4, and if not rupees 10, then rupees 8. In some manner, they will also have to take a clip on their revenues which they were sitting on because of this increasing fuel prices that was essentially adding to inflationary pressures on commodities, particularly food, vegetables, and milk, because all these perishables essentially depend on about 30% of their price component remains transportation, and if the fuel prices continue to increase the manner in which they were, obviously that was adding to the inflationary pressures. For example, just yesterday, there was about 200 rupees increase in the commercial LPG price per cylinder. Now, that's roughly about 12% of the existing price of about 1780 or 1800 rupees. Obviously, if the restaurants, if the roadside food kiosks and joints, if they are going to pay 10% more on their fuel prices, they are going to pass it on to the consumer by of increased price of a roti, or increased price of a naan, or an increased price of a dal makhani. So obviously, the situation was kind of becoming inflationary. The government has taken a prudent call, because if you can have a control over these kind of inflationary tendencies, then you can keep the economy going. It does not bring it back to a stop. So I think a prudent call taken. Now the onus is on the states to really contribute in some manner, so that the price situation is taken care of in the near term. And the long term, obviously, the cycle of these commodities takes care of itself.
Abhishek, just a quick question as far as the excise duty being slashed as far as diesel is concerned, and it is double that of petrol, which would essentially mean that a direct benefit actually goes to the farmers, reduction of VAT, etc., all that put together. So there is one thought process perhaps within the government that there should be a direct benefit as far as farmers are concerned, especially with the upcoming Rabi season.
Shravan, so obviously it's going to be Rabi season now, and the farmers are still coming out of taking their Kharif crops and the intervening monsoon crop. What is important is that the government would want that now that they have made a move, as I was earlier mentioning, by reducing their share of revenues and passing the benefits to the consumer, the states would match, if not match, contribute in some manner, and perhaps take care of the people in the manner in which the center has thought. So obviously, this is this is prudent economics, makes political sense also, given the fact that it was kind of becoming a political issue. But more than that, given the fact that we are recovering out of COVID, Shravan, and the economic recovery, while on a fast clip, is still fragile, you cannot afford to have the inflation gun on the economic recovery scene. So I think this is essentially aimed at making sure that the recovery is out of harm's way from inflationary pressures, and while supply side inflation is good, this kind of inflation where revenues or an attempt to get revenues can have a dampening effect on demand, that is something which has to be avoided. So I think the government thought about it and realized that at this stage, when the demand is just recovering, coming out of the COVID hibernation, to dampen it in any manner because of revenue pressures and because of taxes would not be a good idea, and that's why I think this decision has been taken. Obviously, from here on, ultimately it will depend on how the states match it, and then so far as farmers are concerned, your question, obviously, ultimately, whatever farmers spend on transportation adds to the commodity prices and hence to the final consumer. So obviously, if the taxes are reduced, if the fuel prices come down, if the farmers pay less, it's easier on their pocket as well as it's easier on the pocket of the ultimate consumer as well.